GM. GM. Looking at some altcoins. I'm going to look at Pepe, Ondo as a couple that have pretty good charts and structures outside of the main top coins, Bitcoin, Ethereum. I'm going to compare them in a couple different ways. So I'll be looking at Ondo because it fits the real world asset narrative and is a new coin. Now, there's a couple of interesting things. One thing of note, Ondo doesn't have a Binance spot listing yet, so that's bullish in terms of a future path for it, right? It's the biggest spot market, it's not even on it yet. So that would be a bullish catalyst in the future. Obviously the chart is looking great, good structure here. It's been building up for 2 months, March until May. It's consolidating at the top right hand corner. I think Professor Ayush would like this. Isn't it the 9? Is it 9 EMA he uses or the 9 MA? Regardless, they're roughly the same. So I'll look at a 9 period. Maybe someone can send this to him after and get him to put his expert opinion on it. If you put on the 9, you'll see it here. If you turn that one on, it's consolidating towards the top right hand corner of this 2-month consolidation, above the 9 EMA, above obviously the 50 on the daily. And I think a breakout of this, which you can argue we've already had from a daily close perspective. Well, we haven't had a single one yet. Highest daily close. It could do it today. Either way, a confirmed breakout from this box to me would probably indicate that Ondo goes significantly higher, probably towards, the $2 area. Obviously not in a straight line, but a breakout from there, I would see it probably go into 150 quite easily on a valid confirmed breakout. One of the things I wanted to look at was, because it doesn't have a Binance spot listing yet, where's the trading actually happening for Ondo? And it actually seems like a lot of the volume is on spot, which I would consider to be pretty bullish. If you look at this, so I'll look at Ondo and look down here. So in terms of the spot markets, I've already totaled this up. Of the main spot markets that are legit, not the fucking scammy ones, there's around roughly 145 million in spot volume in the past 24 hours. And in perpetuals, there's about 330 million. So the ratio, the percentage of spot volume is 43% of the perp volume. When you compare that to ETH, only 12% of the volume on ETH is on spot. Bitcoin, 17%. Pepe, 23%. They're just comparisons. So if you're looking at Ondo and saying, is this, is Ondo pushing up here as people are getting long on leverage? It seems like relative to some other trending coins, no. Actually, Ondo seems to have a pretty heavily spot dominated market, which is I find very interesting and potentially bullish as well. If we look at Ondo here, I'll go to a 4-hour chart and we'll zoom out a bit and we'll look at the structure. Obviously, throughout this consolidation, it had a spot premium, as most coins did. It's had, you can see a stark difference here with spot CVDs, positive all the way, perp CVDs, negative all the way. Now, analyzing CVDs across higher, like multi-month timeframes is not the most accurate, but you can see quite clearly there's been consistent spot buying pressure. Open interest has been trending lower throughout this. You do want to see open interest actually picking up. You do want to see positions opening, which they are doing here. Like, you don't want to see open interest declining all the way, because you want to see positions opening as well as prices rising. You just don't want to see it outpacing the price, the market itself. So on that push, when Ondo went up from the lows to the highs, 37% increase in open interest from these lows up to these highs. Price at the same time went up 43%. So that move was largely led by spot. It wasn't led by massive leverage. Funding rates have flipped positive, as they have done across the market on a bunch of coins, but that's not a bad thing, right? If you zoom out again, you'll see how high the funding rates have been on Ondo throughout the the crazier phase of the market. So still compared to that, it's muted. It's not too crazy, not too high. And so I like the look of Ondo here. I think I'd be buying a break out of this box if it can actually break out and close above. If Ondo's able to close above $1 with hopefully, ideally with some above average volume, but if it's able to just close and break outside of this, there's probably a decent swing trade to be had from that area with your stop back below and targeting higher prices. We'll see how that goes on the breakout, but it's definitely one that's catching my eye. And it fits the narrative well of real world assets. The other thing though with Ondo is the emission schedule. So and I think there will be, as I said, on daily levels, I think there's a chance for a wick down around the approval, flushing out some longs on Ethereum and on Bitcoin potentially. So if you do see a spike down, Ondo could be one of the ones to buy on a dip, maybe Pepe as well. What you want to do is, if Ethereum does dump a bit, or if Bitcoin dumps a bit, you want to watch how Ondo performs relative to those. If it's strong on the pullback, that's a good sign. So Ondo has emissions every day, is it? 300,000 upcoming event, 18th of January. So the next big unlock is not until January next year, where a massive amount of tokens are unlocked. It is low float, right? Only 14% of tokens have been unlocked so far. So there is high inflation to come later on. But again, it doesn't get big inflation until January next year. The emissions here are, I guess they're just linear unlocks, community access sale, which is happening when exactly? I guess it is today until, yeah. So over the next week, there's 380,000 Ondo tokens, which is about $380,000 in the next week. Across the next month, after the fucking monthly pro thing. Previous events, 1.4 billion, that was probably on the launch. 18th of January. Yeah. 54,000, here we go. 54,000 Ondo per day for 366 days. So there's about 50k of Ondo being emitted every day. Which you add that up, it's about 300. Yeah. So every week for the next year, essentially, there's 380,000 Ondo tokens being released. That's not a lot, right? When you consider the spot volume is 145 million per day. Can it absorb 300,000 in a week? Easily. So I don't think current unlocks, I don't think they're a big issue. So Ondo looks pretty good. I like Ondo. I like the look of it here. And if it can confirm this breakout, which you have to be mindful, of course, tries to break out here, could be a false breakout first time, might have to come back and frustrate you, and break out again later. So be wary of that. It's not guaranteed to have a breakout by any means, which is why you want to see a bigger move, like a stronger confirmed breakout. You look on the weekly for Ondo, that weekly chart is really nice. And yeah, so Ondo I like. I think Ondo's one to focus on for swing trades. Pepe, another. Obviously Pepe has been strong and has broken out clearly, and this is like, if you're looking at Ondo is here right now, while Pepe has already broken out. Pepe with that breakout, like that's confirmed. It's broken out, its impulse is continued higher, so Pepe is probably one to buy on dips. And I would look at Pepe with the daily bands and the 4-hour bands. As I see, turn that one off there. Daily bands, 4-hour bands are probably the way to play it. I don't think it will wick down into those daily bands from here necessarily, but on a 4-hour chart, if you see some nice consolidation, it's had a daily breakout. It did touch the bands and hold them. If you see it continuing to hold these bands in an upward sloping fashion, dips on Pepe would be good to buy. So I would wait for, again, if there's a flush on Ethereum, if there's a flush on Bitcoin. Watch how Pepe performs as well. It could be one of the better ones to focus on. And I think that's probably where I would have my eyes. Ondo, Pepe are two of the most interesting. Outside of that, I think the majors. I think Bitcoin, Ethereum, and even Solana are going to be the ones to keep focused on. I don't think altcoins as a whole necessarily need to rally that hard here if Ethereum is going to steal the show. Margin data I want to look at. So margin borrow. This is an important chart to look at. And let's look at it from the start of the year. Right? This is how much it costs to borrow Tether. So when borrow rates spike, it's showing that people want leverage. And the higher that gets and the more sustained it gets, the later we are in the rally. You'll notice borrow rates spiked up and we're rising and rising and rising. And what's this? 13th, 12th, 13th, 14th of March. That's the top. Down it goes. Right now, here's where we're at. So from a borrow rate perspective, even though they've spiked up, right, they've jumped from 10% up to 17%, that's not a massive concern. As you can see, previously the market has sustained much higher borrow rates throughout basically all of the rally since October. OKX, same thing. And Bybit, same thing. So leverage-wise, it seems pretty healthy because that's really what this is a rough measure of, leverage. If people are borrowing USDT on margin, they are taking on leverage. That's what they're doing. They're literally borrowing Tether from the exchange or from the exchange to buy more coins to get long. So that seems to indicate this rally has still got room to run. And that doesn't mean get long right now. To me, what that means is buy dips. If you see any correction, any 5%, 10% correction or dip on an altcoin, it's probably a decent buying opportunity. If they pull back into the daily bands or into the 4-hour bands, same thing. So for me, ETH, Ondo, I've got the watch list here. ETH, Pepe, Ondo are the ones I'll be watching in the more immediate term. Ondo itself, still consolidation at these bands, that looks good. I don't see it doing that. I really don't. It could though, but which is why probably best waiting for an actual breakout here. But it's consolidating nicely, holding at the bands. And I don't think Ondo will go back to 80 cents. But I also don't like to, even though these charts look great and it's consolidating near the highs, I don't like to buy them at the top end of the range because you are buying into resistance. And it could just go for one more sweep and come back. It's the breakout. When the breakout comes, it's going to go and it's going to be valid. So a little bit like Pepe did. Pepe sort of indicates to you this type of thing. It pushed up into the highs, looked great. What did it do? Dropped back for a few days into the bands. Then it broke out with above average volume, and that was your breakout signal. I don't see a clear signal like that yet on Ondo, as the volumes are pretty muted, and it's just sort of consolidating here. So positions are still building. I would like to see some kind of impulsive break and hold above $1. Ideally, you want to see Ondo close a daily candle above 103, 105 with above average volume. That probably would indicate to me that continuation on a more immediate sense is coming. So I'll be watching Ondo as it pushes to these levels and looking to probably trade it higher over the coming days or weeks. And if it does break out, then you're looking at the daily bands for dip. Right, similar to over here when it was relatively new. It launched, it consolidated near the highs of that range. What did it do? Broke out, big volume, high volume breakout. Follow the trend then. Trends up, and the bands give you several good entries until it reached the peak, drop back down into support, and away it goes again. These are daily candles. You've plenty of time. So I think Ondo's a good one to look at. I think Pepe is a good one to look at. And I think you want to be watching Ethereum around the approval. Is there a dip? Does it continue? Borrow rates would tell me that there's not a crazy amount of leverage built up in the system yet. So I think we're in buy the dip mode. I think this whole market's going to go higher. And you can see this from funding rates too. Here's the funding rates over the past week. Some of them, like Ondo, are just starting to tick towards positive funding, right? Definitely seeing some positive funding come in here. Again, small caps, mid caps, a little bit, large caps, basically nothing. And when you compare that to zoomed out, right, we can't even see actually because it doesn't go beyond that. But if you remember back in January, February, March, we had super high sustained funding rates for ages, right? So looks good. Overall, market's good, seems healthy, buy the dips, and I think you want to be selective on which dips you buy. So they're the ones I'm going to focus on. GM, GM, GM.